Celeste is one of my favorite games. It has a perfect balance of beautiful graphics and story, along with challenging platforming. It's very simple. You can jump, climb, and dash. But with those options, there are so many unique ways to move. I had a great time playing through the main story and collecting all the strawberries, but today I decided to play Seasides, where they take every good thing about Celeste and throw it in the trash. There's no story, and now the platforming is so ridiculously hard, it's no longer fun. But I'm gonna try and beat all the 8 Seasides anyway. I've already beat the first Seaside, so I decided to use it as a warm-up. I'm going in with 199 deaths already, so let's see how it goes. The first room requires you to grab onto these moving platforms and then dash off before you get killed. The first 3 I was able to get pretty consistently, but the last one always felt just a little bit harder, and I don't know why. The next room was some simple parkour that I got on my 3rd try. Since I've already done the final level, I understood how to do it and had some practice and muscle memory already built, but it's still very difficult. The hardest part for me was this platform right here. I could pretty consistently get off of it by dashing diagonally, but getting back on is all about timing, and I messed it up a lot. Then after that platform is an even harder one, where you have to jump off of it halfway and then land in this tiny gap. But after getting that once, the final dash was easy, and I got my first heart after 25 minutes and 29 seconds. Subtracting the previous deaths, it took me 143 tries to make it to the end. And I'm not gonna lie, if 25 minutes is good for redoing the easiest level, I am so scared for the later ones. If you're enjoying the video so far, then hit the subscribe button. I upload every Monday, and it would mean a lot to me. Thank you. I had 137 deaths going to the 2nd level, and apparently I just gave up. So let's fix that. The first room is basically a tutorial. While you're dashing through a dream block, you can hold grab and left to grab onto the wall instead of being flung into spikes. The next room was a bit harder. You have 2 clones chasing you while you activate 4 keys to open a door. My general path for this was to dash diagonally upwards through the dream blocks, getting the first 2 keys. Then I would jump off, falling to the 3rd, and upward dashing to get the final one. The 3rd room is where I started to find a really annoying thing about these challenges. In almost all the Seasides, you have to input very specific types of dashes, and a lot of the time I would accidentally rotate the joystick a little too far and go in the completely wrong direction. It was really frustrating, and even though it was my fault, it felt so far out of my control, as I have no intention of doing so. In this green crystal section, you want to pause for a second after the 2nd crystal, or else you'll go straight into a spike. And in this final section, after each dream block and jump, you can just grab the wall and readjust so you're not too high or too low. You can't do that on the final block, however, or the key platform required to finish the level will move out of the way. I eventually strung everything together and finished the level in 50 minutes and 58 seconds. And if this trend of increasing time continues exponentially, it's estimated that the final Seaside will take about 53 hours, or about 2 days of straight gameplay. So let's hope that doesn't happen. It took me 277 deaths, and now we can move on to Chapter 3, which is the first one that I haven't tried. The first room is, scary to say the least. Originally, I was just dashing through and praying for my life, but this really isn't a good strat, and after 10 minutes of me just throwing myself at it over and over again, I decided to try and learn their patterns. If you dash diagonally up, you can time it to never get hit. It's still very hard, but I managed to get over to the right side for the first time. I recommend getting close to the bottom and dashing away, as you get your dash replenished and it's a lot faster than jumping. The timer resets anytime you die in the first level, but currently we're about 18 minutes deep. The 2nd room was all about timing, and the 3rd room was where I started to notice a pattern. In each Seaside, you have 2 beginning levels that are either a tutorial or some practice for what is going to come in the extremely long and difficult 3rd room. The 3rd room for Chapter 3 has a lot of timing-based platforming, and to add stress, Mr. Oshiro's back and chasing you every 2 seconds. My general strategy for the first part was to immediately dash and wall jump up the first section. Then I would slide down and wait for Mr. Oshiro to start charging me before jumping and dashing away. I would then rinse and repeat on the 3rd pillar, and I'm already through the first third of the level super consistently. The only other section to give me a lot of difficulty was the end. Here, you have to bounce off Mr. Oshiro's head to reach a key in a distant platform. To line him up properly, I would jump when he first appears, then dash when the lightning thing happens, showing where he's going to go. The last section was also sketchy, because I had to bot Mr. Oshiro once again to get my dash back, before getting the heart in an hour, 12 minutes, and 3 seconds. And oh, does that sound feel glorious. In level 4, I had to wall bounce out of these blue balls, which felt strange and wrong. The second room did take me 12 minutes because jumping around and around this moving platform was really hard for me to get down, but pretty quickly I approached the third room. This room has high wind and it definitely messes some things up. Before I talk about how I beat the room, I just want to talk about something weird that happened to me. During this attempt, I butchered my movement and totally should have smacked this wall with spikes, but instead I slid down it and died somewhere else. I don't know. To get to the second platform, I would try and jump high enough to hit this wall, and then I would hold right and always make it to the platform. After that, there were some somewhat precise jumps through spikes and some really fun jumps over increasingly smaller platforms, before I just barely nicked the golden heart in 37 minutes and 21 seconds. It honestly felt pretty easy, and I don't know if that was just the odd one out or if I just improved that fast. I somehow died 342 times, so it might have just been a really short level, but regardless, my spirits were high entering level 5. Both of the first two levels are practice at wall bouncing. This is done by dashing upwards and then jumping off the wall for a lot of height. You have to be in the perfect position though, or you'll either be too far from the wall or you'll bonk your head. The second room wasn't just about stringing them together though. This time you get launched across the room, which was pretty fun. The third room was basically just a bunch of balls and walls. If you're not wall bouncing, you're riding in a ball to the next wall bounce. It still took a ton of tries to be able to string so many precise wall bounces together, but the worst part was the dashing section at the end. You get no practice since it's at the end, and when I finally did it, it looked so easy, but I still died here a lot. Like the last level, this only took a little over 37 minutes, and somehow still caused me to die 347 times. I'm just going to skip over the first room in Chapter 6 and talk about the second. You have to fall, dash, and golden leaf your way through a lot of spikes, and it can either be done two ways. You can have a great reaction speed and beat it in a few goes, or play for forever to build muscle memory until you can finally get it. And I don't exactly have great reaction speed. So I had to play through this level over and over again until I finally got it after 15 minutes of trying. Since the short levels had already taken me so much time, I figured I was in for the longest one yet. But actually that wasn't the case for a strange reason I'll explain in a little bit. The first section requires you to repeatedly beat up a Kevin until you're at the bottom of the stage and he can fling you over to this section. I figured that I'd just get really good at manipulating the Kevin and I'd get here to practice almost every time. But then I tried the blue orb section and this happened. There's a checkpoint. And look, I'm not complaining because it was very nice to have this level only take 40 minutes instead of like 2 hours, but why? The whole point of seasides is that they should be long and difficult, and putting a checkpoint in the middle kind of defeats the purpose. It's also unique to level 6. No other chapter gets a checkpoint like this, so why add it here? Anyway, it's now time for the bane of my existence, Chapter 7. Normally, only the final level has this little stand that allows you to see the entire level because the first two levels are so short. But not Chapter 7. The first room already took me a half hour. You have to string together a ridiculous amount of wall bounces, and it's so easy to just mess up one and have to restart the entire level. The timer continuously resets whenever you die in this level, so just know that there's an added half hour. The next room was pretty easy and only took me a couple of tries, but it did have a cool part where you have to activate a spring and then fall with it and hit it again to finish the level. And now, the final level. Let's just take a look at it. That is way too many spikes. Since this took me more than 9.5 hours to complete, I'm going to go through every obstacle and try and give the best advice so it doesn't take you so long if you want to attempt this. In the first part, you pink cloud up and have to dash and then basically not move at all. I got the spacing really good for this part so I could dash and then fall right through, but even so, after 9 hours I was still messing this up quite a bit. The first spring is pretty easy and not that precise. Try to aim for the upper half of the spring and you should clear the spike tower relatively easily. The second tower is another story. You want to hit as high as you can on the spring to give you the maximum height. You then want to get as close to the spike wall as you can before dashing up 2 times. But if you clear it, it's not over yet. You have to move to the right to not die in the spike pile. Unfortunately, there aren't too many tricks I can give you for the next section except to try it. It's honestly probably the easiest part. It's a little hard to fall through this gap in particular, but I rarely die besides that unless I miss an input or something. But then there's this pink cloud, and it's terrible. At first, I was trying to get a medium jump off of it, and while it did work occasionally, it had a very high fatality rate. Towards the end, I realized that if you land and immediately jump, you can do a regular jump off of it, and this will give you just enough height to reach the spring. You kind of just have to learn the spacing for this wall bounce. I bonked my head or just missed it so many times, but it's unavoidable. You want a full bounce on this pink cloud while avoiding spikes and dash straight up and diagonally to the right to be able to reach this spring. And now you're in the end game. It's a tunnel full of spikes and very precise movement. Since this is so far into the level, you get next to no practice and you're always stressed when you get here. It's also the hardest part of the entire level. You can't hold forward for the first section or you'll go too far forward, so I honestly just let go and tap the dash button twice. I then dash upwards twice. At the top of this, the goal is to be as far to the left as possible. This allows you to dash to the right and easily adjust to grab the next crystal. If you're too far to the right, then you won't have enough time and room to get back over. And that's the hardest part of this section. The only times I died here was when I dashed up instead of diagonally or something like that, and while it was infuriating, the final attempt in this area felt so satisfying to pull off. At the end, they decide to have a troll platform that you need to be ready for because if you do all the hard things and die to that, I can't imagine the pain and sadness you would feel. At the end of the level, we find the grandma and get one final chat with her before finally getting to dash into the golden heart after 9 hours, 32 minutes, and 31 seconds. And I just sat there and gloried in the sound for a while. But we're not done yet. We still have the core of the mountain. It's interesting because to activate this, you literally need to have every heart, and I was just praying this wasn't going to take me even longer and be even harder. The first stage is a wave dashing tutorial that took me longer than I want to admit because I didn't realize that you can hold the B button to go further. After that revelation, it took me all of 15 seconds to get through the room. The second room featured some platforming with these guys, and the fun thing about them is that they go a different direction depending on where you're standing on them. So each time you go to a slightly different place and have to adjust to that. But after 20 minutes I put everything together and took a look at the final level. Just to scroll through it took 20 seconds. Why is it so long? Anyway, getting into the actual level. Just like last time, I'm going to go through each section and try and help anyone out because this took me several hours. Unfortunately, right after I hit 3 hours, I went to go get some water and accidentally bumped something because when I came back, the game was closed and my progress wasn't saved. So I had to start from scratch. But who cares? Throughout the whole level, lava and ice rise from the floor or fall from the ceiling, and you have to constantly hit switches to change that around and not get killed. For the first section, you ride the conveyor belt and get to the first platform. You can then just hold right and jump to get to the following platforms. To get up this part, I would usually jump once and then jump again to land on this platform. In the next part, the lava will be rising very fast, so you gotta beat it. Diagonally dash through the first one and then go straight through the next two. The top of the lava apparently doesn't kill you, so often it would look like I hit it, but I just wouldn't die. The part after that is probably my least favorite out of every seaside because it felt completely random whether I lived or died. You have to jump around and hit this blue guy from the back, but if you're too high up, you won't go far enough, and you can apparently hit it so good that you just get launched way past where you need to go. But once you manage to get past the RNG, you make it onto these pink clouds. You do the same thing as the second cloud in Chapter 7 Seaside and do short hops off of it until the bottom. You then launch yourself onto this platform and climb up, except I don't use the climb button. Normally these platforms fall and you have to do this part very quickly, but if you instead just jump off of them, they don't activate and you have all the time in the world. This is especially nice if the lava is pretty far down and you have to wait for it to rise. You activate a Kevin and get launched over here. After jumping up to the third platform, you want to jump a little past the spring and then turn back to the left to activate it. If you try and just fall onto the spring, you'll hit a spike and be very frustrated. After stringing together 3 springs, you have this section which looks daunting, but is actually one of the easiest sections. Just dash up and to the side, over and over and over and over and over again. Once you get to the end, you have to land in the middle of this area, and I have to say it's harder than it looks. The amount of times I undershot or overshot was ridiculous, and it pissed me off so much since it's so close to the end of the level. For this platforming, just climb up as high as you can before jumping to the next platform and you should be good. After getting flung up here, hit the switch right before the lava is about to hit you for the most amount of time to prepare. You have to land 2 wave dashes in a row. I was always so stressed that I messed this up more times than I want to admit. But after 4 hours, 53 minutes, and 47 seconds, I managed to get the heart with the biggest smile of relief on my face. I listened to the collection noise and enjoyed the ending music of a chapter completed. If you enjoyed the video, then a like and subscribe would mean so much to me. I upload every week and plan on making more Celeste content in the future, so stay tuned for that. If you have any video ideas, leave them in the comments below, and I'll be sure to check them out. Thank you for watching, and have a great rest of your day.